In this video, I'm going to show you how to resize your image inside of Photoshop. Now, typically something you'll want to do is change the size of your image or your photos or the design you're working on, or maybe even cut out parts of that image and use just that. So let's go ahead and take a look at that now. As you can see here, I've opened up the plant.psd file, and you can follow along with that file if you'd like, or you can just open up your own image inside of Photoshop. Now on the right hand side we have our properties panel pulled up, and you can see it says document properties 26.667 inches by 17.778 inches, and that is our width and our height, and we have a resolution set to 72 pixels per inch. Now the resolution is basically saying that there's 72 little blocks every inch that makes up this design, and if you're unaware of what a pixel is and we zoom in on this document, you can see as we get closer in, it starts breaking up into little squares. And these are the actual pixels that make up this document. So if I look at a different section here, we can see we have dark squares and dark green and light green and some white and blue squares. And this is actually what your image is being made out of. And so this is saying that there's 72 pixels per inch in this document. Now, of course, if we increase that resolution, there would be more pixels per inch, which would give us a cleaner looking image, but it's also going to increase the file size, and you'll need to keep that in mind whenever you're working in your document. So let's go ahead and zoom back out here. And before we get started on resizing the document, let me show you how you can change this. Now, because I'm in the United States, we use standard, what we call standard measurement, and that's usually inches and feet and what have you. However, you might be using a metric system such as centimeters and millimeters, or you might not be working with print. Maybe you're working with web design or logos and you want to work in pixels instead of a measurement standard. So let's see how you can change that. If you go to the top and you click on Edit and you go down to Preferences, you can actually click on Units and Rulers, and here we can change the preferences for our documents. So at the top we can see we have units, and our rulers are in inches, and our type is in points. Type being typography, words and letters. And we can change these. We can change the rulers to pixels, inches, centimeters, and so on, or we can change our type to pixels, points, and millimeters. Points is usually the main one that people use. But let's go ahead and change our ruler. Maybe we want to work with pixels or centimeters instead of inches. So we can change that here. And one other quick note that you might want to know immediately is on the right hand side, new document preset resolutions. These are the resolutions whenever you create a new document, and you might want to change these. Now 300 pixels per inch is pretty common with print resolution whenever you're printing anything out, like say a magazine or brochure or something like that. And screen resolution is 72 pixels per inch. That's when you're dealing with things like, say, games or web design or something like that. You'll want a smaller resolution when you're working with things on the internet, because a web page has to load images quickly, and the smaller the resolution you have, the smaller the file size and the quicker that image would actually load. So we've changed our rulers to pixels. Let's go ahead and hit OK. And now in our document properties, you can see that it has changed our width and height to 1920 pixels by 1280. And then we still have the same resolution of 72 pixels per inch. So once you have that set up to your liking, let's see how we would change the actual size of this image. Maybe this image is way too big. Whenever we print it out, it's 26 inches and it's too much, or maybe we're using it on the internet and this picture is too big and we need a smaller version of it. How would we do that? Well, go up to the top menu bar and click on Image, and then go to Image Size. You can see the shortcut key here. And when I click on that, this will allow us to actually change the size of the image and the document itself, the canvas that the image sits on. So you can see here that the image size is 7 megabytes, 1920 by 1280, and we can use some of these presets. So here we have things like letter size, and we have different sizes for print, and then we have some sizes that are pretty common for, say, web design and what have you. or we can change it at the bottom. So we can punch in the numbers. We can also click these and pick whatever we want to work with. Pick if you know an exact pixel dimension or exact inches that you want to work with. We'll just leave it on % for now. And we can change our resolution here. Now, if you're starting with a low resolution image, it's harder to actually make it a higher resolution image. It's harder to make it look cleaner. However, if you're starting with a high resolution image, it's easier to make it look lower resolution. Just keep that in mind as you begin working. If you're wondering why your low resolution image isn't getting clear, it's because it was saved as low resolution and it's hard to compensate for that. Resampling is basically the way that it's going to remap the pixels for your image. So if you leave that checked here, whenever we change the width and the height, it'll resample those pixels to the new document size. So let's go ahead and take a look real fast. If we change the % of our width and height to say 50%, and they change together because there's a little lock icon here. If we uncheck that lock, we can make them do a separate amount. So you see they didn't change together. But let's go ahead and change those to 50 and we'll turn the lock back on so they're working together. And we'll go to 50 and the resolution still at 72 pixels per inch, so it's keeping the same resolution. You can see that it's changed the information at the top. Now our new dimension is going to be 960 by 640 and we have a smaller file size. So when you're working on the web, this might be something that you want. You don't need a big image. You want it to be half the size and we have a smaller file size, which means it'll load quicker. So I can go ahead and hit OK, and you'll see it's made that image smaller. If I zoom in real quick, this is at 100%. You can see that in the bottom left-hand side. And what we'll do is we'll go ahead and undo that real fast. So when we go back to 100%, this is actually 100% of the image. It's bigger than our document window, so that's why we usually have to zoom out to 66% or 50%. Now, if we go back up and we click on image and we go to image size again, we can actually click on resample to uncheck it, and then we can set the resolution independently. Before it would change with the width and height. Now we can set a higher or a lower resolution and save that out if we need to do that. So we'll just undo that. And that is how you would resize an image inside of Photoshop. Now, something else that you will commonly do is you'll cut out a piece of this image. Maybe we want to print this out and we have a frame that's a nice vertical frame, but it won't fit this whole picture. There's too much space on the left and right hand sides. How could we just cut out this plant and get rid of the excess image that we don't need? Well, we call that cropping, and cropping is basically that. It's cutting out the part of the image that you want to use. So here we're back to our original image. We're at 1920 by 1280, 72 pixels per inch. Again, if we were printing this, we'd probably want to go ahead and change it to 300 pixels per inch so it looks a little crisper when it prints out. But over on the left-hand side is our toolbar. And here we have the crop tool with the shortcut key C, and it says trims or expands the edges of an image. So if we click on that, what happens is we now have a selection around the whole image. We call these marching ants, these little tiny boxes, if you can see them on the screen. And then we also have some handles in the corners and on the left and right hand side and the top and the bottom. And what this allows us to do is we can grab these handles, and when I do, I just click and drag and shift over. And let's go ahead and click and drag the right one. Now, whatever I have done, whatever I have cropped here is what our image is going to convert to. So let's just go ahead and hit enter. And you can see that now the canvas is cropped out those outside borders. We've just selected what we wanted to see. And if we look at our document properties, we didn't mess with the height, so it's still at 1280, but now we have a width of 627 pixels across from left to right. And that's how we could crop out this document. Now there's another way to crop too, and that's by using a selection and then using the crop feature in the image tab at the top of the menu bar. I'll show you how to do that. So the first thing we need to do is we need to make a selection. Maybe we also don't want the top and the bottom, we just want more of the plant itself in our picture. So let's go ahead and select the rectangle marquee tool here with the shortcut key M, and it says makes a selection in the shape of a rectangle. And we're gonna just grab this center plant here and not the top and bottom. So I'm gonna start over here off the document. I'm gonna click and drag, and now we're seeing those marching ants again, and it's making a selection for us. And now, just like before, whatever we have selected, everything in the side of this rectangle is what's going to be cropped. And to do that, instead of using the crop tool, I can go up to Image and select Crop. Now this won't be highlighted if you don't have a selection made already. But once you have a selection made, you hit Crop and it will crop the image down to whatever you have selected. And you can see now our height has changed to 1079 because we've gotten rid of the top and bottom canvas section of the unnecessary pieces that we didn't want. This also works true if you're using a different type of selection, like say a circle or an ellipse, and what will happen is it'll crop to the edges of your selection. Let me show you that real fast. So if we go back to our rectangle tool and we click and hold down, you'll see there's an elliptical marquee tool. We'll select that and it'll create an ellipse for us. First we need to deselect what is selected right now, or it'll cause a problem. So to do that, just go up to the top where it says select, and then deselect. Control or Command D. This is another shortcut key you'll probably want to memorize, as also select all. Those are pretty common, so try to remember these here. You'll use them pretty often. So I'll select that. And then now I can use the elliptical marquee tool to make a circle or an ellipse. And whenever I go to the top and I click Image Crop, it'll actually crop to the borders of that selection. So you can see where our selection was made and where it has cropped to here. And also you can see the document properties are now 440 by 517. So it's a much smaller document than when we started. I'm going to go ahead and deselect that, and then I'm going to undo some of these commands and get back to our original image here. And just like cropping, we can change the canvas size without changing the actual image itself. So we can make the canvas smaller without cropping by changing the canvas size, but it won't actually make the image smaller. So to do that, you'll go up to the top and click on Image, and then go to Canvas Size. And we can set new dimensions for our canvas without changing the dimensions of the image itself. So for instance, maybe we wanted to make that width smaller. So let's just go ahead to about 625, I believe it was. And you can see that the new size is going to be a smaller file format because it's a smaller document. And we'll hit OK. And it'll say the new canvas size is smaller than the current canvas size. Some clipping will occur. Well, clipping is like cropping. It's basically going to cut out any unnecessary image that we have here, and that's okay with us. So we'll hit proceed. And now it's done essentially the same thing. It's changed the canvas size, but the image size has not changed. And in our document properties, you can see that we have 1280 by 625. So those are the dimensions that we gave it. One more thing, if I undo that and I go to Image and I go to Canvas Size, you can do the same thing. However, you can change where it actually crops from. So right now when I did that, it did a nice perfectly center crop, or change the canvas size from the center, because we have it selected here at the anchor. Now if I select the left hand side, what will happen is when it clips out that image, it'll do it from the left hand side instead of the center. I'm going to use the same dimensions, but let's take a look at that. So hit OK, and we'll hit proceed. And it's actually cut out of the left-hand side of the image. If you imagine, the plant is actually to the right, but because we anchored it to the left, it clipped the left-hand side, and we still have the same document, 625 by 1280, but the anchor was off to the left and not centered, so that's why you no longer see the plant. That might be very useful whenever you begin changing canvas sizes for the different documents that you're working on. So we'll just go ahead and undo that here. And that is how you resize an image inside of Photoshop, whether you're changing the actual image size itself to a bigger or smaller image, or you want to change the canvas size to shrink down, clip, or crop out a piece of the image that you would like to use.